It was a Saturday in late September, and the Pine Brook Golf Club in Buckhead, Atlanta, Georgia, sat the way old money always sits, quiet, deliberate, unhurried, as though time itself had agreed to move more slowly on these particular 180 acres. The fairways were a deep, particular green that does not happen by accident. The clubhouse smelled of leather and cedar, and the faint ghost of cigars from a previous generation. Members had been coming here since 1961. Their fathers had come before them. A waiting list for membership ran to 14 months, and the application required 2 sitting member sponsors, a background review, and an interview described in the club's literature as informal, and in practice, nothing of the kind. On the morning of September 23, 2023, a black SUV pulled through the Pine Brook gates at 8:14 a.m. and parked in the guest lot. The man who stepped out was wearing a plain white polo shirt, khaki shorts, clean white golf shoes, and a cap pulled low. No entourage, a single golf bag over one shoulder. He had made a tee time under a corporate name 3 days earlier through a booking service the club offered for corporate hospitality guests, a provision buried in 2 lines at the bottom of page 4 of the member services brochure. He checked in at the pro shop. The young man behind the counter, college kid, maybe 20, name tag reading Cole, processed the payment, looked up, and went very still for exactly 1 second before recovering with the professionalism of someone who understood his job required him not to react to things. He handed over a scorecard and a pencil. "Cart's on the left, sir. Enjoy your round." Shaquille O'Neal thanked him and walked toward the first tee. He noticed 3 things before he reached it. The first was the parking lot. 6 vehicles in a row, all vanity plates, all variations of the same 3 letters. Not coincidence. The arrangement of people who have been parking in the same spots long enough that the spots had become functionally theirs. The second was the groundskeeper, a black man, mid-60s, working the edge of the 3rd fairway with a long-handled tool, wearing a hat with the club's crest on it. He moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had been doing this work in this place for a very long time, and had learned, somewhere along the way, how to be invisible while doing it. He did not look up. The third was a wooden notice board near the pro shop entrance. Pinned to it, slightly off-center, Pine Brook Heritage Invitational, members and sponsored guests only, October 14th. Beneath it, handwritten in blue pen, 1 edition. No corporate hospitality bookings honored that weekend. Shaq read it, kept walking, filed it with the other 2. Now, here is the part that nobody at Pine Brook Golf Club understood on the morning of September 23rd. What was about to happen had not begun on a golf course. It had begun 18 months earlier in a conference room in downtown Atlanta, in a 45-minute meeting between Shaquille O'Neal and a real estate attorney named Patricia Osei. He had said very little during that meeting. He had asked 3 questions. The third question was the one that changed everything. What he had learned in that room, what he had been carrying quietly across the following 18 months, was something the men inside that clubhouse had absolutely no idea he knew. Stay with this story. The morning it becomes clear is not the morning you are expecting. Shaquille Rashawn O'Neal was born on March 6, 1972, in Newark, New Jersey, in a city that had no patience for the idea that certain spaces were not yours to enter. His mother, Lucille O'Neal, was 5'3" and had developed through long practice a particular relationship with rooms not designed with her in mind. She did not fight them. She did not shrink from them. She moved through them as though they had always been hers, which was, she believed, the only response that cost the other side anything at all. She gave him 1 sentence, over and over, the way she gave him everything important, without ceremony, because she understood he would need it long after she could remind him. She would look up at this enormous boy of hers and say, "Any room that tries to make you small is a room that needs you more than it knows." He heard it so many times it stopped being a sentence. It became a way of walking into places. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, Sergeant Philip Harrison, U.S. Army, gave him the other half. Philip was a man who planned, not frantically, not with anxiety, but with the long patience of someone who understood that the right response to a closed door is never the door itself. It is what you build while no one is watching. He had one thing he said when Shaq encountered resistance. Said it calmly, said it like a fact about weather. "Don't argue with the wall, buy the building." He said it as a metaphor. His stepson had a lifelong habit of taking metaphors literally. Philip Harrison died in 2013. He did not live to see what that instruction would eventually produce on a Saturday morning at a golf club in Buckhead. But he would not have been surprised. He would have nodded once, the slow nod of a man whose math had always been correct, and said nothing else. The Rise, you know. LSU. The 1992 draft. Orlando, Los Angeles, Miami. 4 championships, 14 All-Star selections, a net worth north of $400 million, a doctorate, a portfolio spanning fast food, real estate, entertainment, and technology. By September of 2023, Shaquille O'Neal did not play golf often, but he had been thinking about Pine Brook Golf Club for 18 months, and the golf was almost entirely beside the point. The club manager's name was Gerald Whitmore, 61 years old, third-generation Atlantan. He had managed Pine Brook for 14 years, having come up through the membership committee and the board before moving into the management role in 2009. He was a precise, formal man, deeply attentive to the specific culture of the club in the way people are when an institution's culture has been their entire professional identity for 3 decades. He had grown up understanding, without anyone ever saying it directly, that Pine Brook was a particular kind of place for a particular kind of member. The wait list was real, but not random. The sponsor requirement was real, but sponsors were not chosen randomly either. In 14 years, he had watched the membership demographics shift in the small, managed ways that people like Gerald tracked on personal spreadsheets reviewed quarterly. He had never examined this practice with any real scrutiny. It had never felt like something that required scrutiny. It felt, instead, like stewardship. He had been out of the building when Shaq checked in. He was made aware at 8:47 a.m. by a text from his assistant that said only, "You should come to the clubhouse." He arrived at the 9th green at 9:22, where Shaq was finishing his front 9 alone, unhurried, shooting what any honest observer would have called a perfectly respectable round for a recreational player. Gerald had a specific walk for situations like this, measured, surface-friendly, carrying beneath it the full weight of 14 years of authority in this place. He approached the cart path. He said, pleasantly, "Sir, I'm going to need to ask you to come with me to the clubhouse. There are some provisions of the corporate hospitality program we need to clarify." Shaq finished his putt, marked his scorecard, looked up. "Happy to," he said. In Gerald Whitmore's office, photographs of past presidents on the wall, a trophy case along the left side, a window overlooking the 18th green. Gerald explained that a review of the booking had raised questions about eligibility under the hospitality provision. He used the word clarification 4 times in 3 minutes. He referenced the club's right to review all non-member bookings. He did not say anything technically actionable. He was very good at this. He had been doing versions of it for 14 years. When he finished, Shaq nodded. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Gerald said, "Of course." "How long has Earl Washington worked here?" Something behind Gerald's expression recalibrated, A small adjustment. Our grounds staff, Earl Washington, he was working the third fairway this morning. He has been working at this property since 1987. That's 36 years. Gerald said he was not sure what that had to do with. Does he have a pension? A pause. Staff compensation is a matter of. He doesn't. I know he doesn't. The club reclassified 3 ground staff positions from full-time to independent contractor status in 2019, which removed those positions from the benefit structure entirely. Earl was one of the 3. He was 59 years old at the time. Shaq let that land. About 18 months ago, I had a meeting with a real estate attorney named Patricia Osei. She was representing the Calloway family, the founding family of this club. They hold a 22% stake in the Pinebrook Property Trust. They were looking for a buyer. Gerald Whitmore had gone completely still. I bought their stake 18 months ago. The paperwork cleared in March. He reached into the golf bag leaning against the office wall and produced a manila envelope, which he placed on the desk without opening it. That is what I was 18 months ago. What I became yesterday evening is different. Gerald opened the envelope. Inside was a purchase agreement, dated September 22nd. The Hendricks Group, a holding entity majority controlled by Shaquille O'Neal, had acquired the remaining 78% of the Pinebrook Property Trust from 3 separate sellers. Each approached quietly over the preceding 14 months, each agreeing to terms independently. The sale had closed at 11:59 p.m. the previous evening. Gerald Whitmore sat with the document in his hands for a long time. "I'm not here to close this club," Shaq said. His voice had not changed register by a single degree from the parking lot to this office. "The members love this place, and that matters. I'm not taking that from anyone." He stood, picked up his golf bag. "What I am going to do is this. Earl Washington returns to full-time status today, with retroactive back pay from the date of reclassification in 2019. The other 2 affected staff get the same treatment. The corporate hospitality program will be expanded, and the restriction for the Heritage Invitational is removed. And the membership application process," he looked at the trophy wall, at the photographs of every past president in the same decade of the same demographic, "is going to look different." He walked to the door. "I've got a back 9 to finish," he said. "Cole at the pro shop knows how to reach me." He walked out. "Don't argue with the wall. Buy the building." Gerald Whitmore sat in his office for 22 minutes after the door closed. He looked at the purchase agreement. He looked at the photographs on the wall. He looked at the window overlooking the 18th green and thought about 36 years, and a spreadsheet on a personal laptop, and a man working the third fairway at 8 a.m. who had learned to move through this place as though he were furniture in it. He picked up his phone. He called his assistant. He said, "Ask Earl Washington to come to my office when he gets a chance." Earl Washington arrived 40 minutes later, still in his work clothes, hat in his hands, with the posture of a man who has spent decades understanding that being called to management offices at this club is rarely about good news. He sat down. Gerald told him everything: the reclassification, the back pay, what the new ownership had said. Earl looked at the window for a moment, the same window he had looked at, or one like it, for 36 years. He had watched the oaks along the 16th fairway grow from staked saplings into trees that now threw 30 feet of afternoon shade. He had watched 5 head groundskeepers come and go. He had watched members who brought their children back eventually as members themselves. He said, quietly, "Who bought it?" Gerald told him. Earl Washington was quiet for a while. Then he said something Gerald would repeat to his wife that evening, that the wife would repeat to her sister, that the sister would eventually write down because she did not want to forget it exactly. That man played golf this morning on a course he already owned, and he didn't say a word to a soul. He just played. On the back nine, Shaq shot a 41. Cole from the pro shop walked out to the 14th hole with a bottle of water and handed it over without making it a moment. They talked for a few minutes about the course, which holes played longer than they looked, which green was the most deceptive, the way the wind moved through the back nine in the late morning. Then Cole said, carefully, watching the fairway rather than the man, "I heard something's happening with the ownership. I don't know what it means for my job." Shaq handed back the bottle. "You processed my payment this morning," he said, "when you could have made something of it and you didn't. That's the job." He looked down the fairway. "You're fine." Cole nodded, looked at the flag, then said, "Thank you, sir." "Thank you for doing your job," Shaq said. That was all. He finished the hole. He walked the last four in the particular way of a man who is not rushing toward anything, because everything is already where it is supposed to be. He signed his scorecard at the pro shop. He left it with Cole. He drove out through the same gates he had driven in through at 8:14 that morning. The groundskeeper was still working the far edge of the property, moving along the tree line at the 17th, hat pulled low against the midday sun. Shaq stopped the car. He got out. He walked across the grass, which was, as of 11:59 the previous evening, his grass, to where Earl Washington was working. Earl looked up. He was a man who had looked up at unexpected things for 36 years and had learned not to show much when he did. Shaq introduced himself. Earl said he knew who he was. "I just wanted to say," Shaq said, "that the oaks on 16 look good." Earl Washington looked at him for a moment. Then he looked at the trees. Then he said, "I planted those in 1991. "I know," Shaq said. "I read the grounds records." They stood there for a moment in the September morning, two men beside 30-year-old trees, and neither of them said anything else because nothing else needed to be said. Lucille O'Neill was right about something she told an enormous boy 1,000 times until it became the temperature of every room he walked into. That the only cost the other side ever pays is paid by the person who moves through without argument, without performance, without lowering themselves to the size the room was trying to assign. Any room that tries to make you small is a room that needs you more than it knows. Earl Washington drove home that afternoon and sat at his kitchen table and called his daughter in Charlotte. He tried to explain what had happened. His daughter said, "Daddy, are you crying?" He said no. She said, "Okay." Then neither of them spoke for a minute, and then he said, "He read the grounds records. He knew about the trees." And his daughter said quietly, "He knew about you." Drop a comment below and tell us, where are you watching from, and what did you build while nobody was watching? If this story moved you, give it a like. It is the only way it reaches the people who need it. Subscribe and join a community that always comes back for the ones that matter. The next video is right there waiting. We will see you there.